You've probably said it, you've heard it, you've definitely seen the movie. Friends with benefits. It's one of those phrases that's just everywhere. But have you ever stopped to think about how truly weird it is? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this phrase and what it really tells us about modern relationships. And that brings us to the central question, doesn't it? I mean, really think about it. Of all the words in the English language we could have picked, why on earth did we land on something that sounds like it was pulled directly from a corporate HR manual to describe one of the most personal and, let's be honest, messiest parts of being human? So, just so we're all on the same page, what exactly are we talking about? Well, it's this arrangement, this deal that tries to draw these neat, clean lines separating friendship and sex, all while keeping them walled off from any kind of romantic commitment. But as we're about to find out, it is rarely ever that simple. Okay, so let's start with the words themselves. Because the language we use, it doesn't just describe our reality, it actually shapes it. And in this case, it's pretty clear that it's framing intimacy as some kind of business deal. The real giveaway here is that word benefits. It's not a word you typically hear when talking about connection or intimacy, is it? By borrowing it straight from the corporate world, the phrase very cleverly frames sex as a kind of bonus feature, like an add-on to the standard friendship package. This language creates this professional distance from what is, by its very nature, an incredibly vulnerable act. I mean, think about it. We talk about employment benefits, retirement benefits, membership benefits. All of these things are totally transactional. They're calculated, they're defined, and they're pretty impersonal. So applying this term to intimacy is like a linguistic sleight of hand. It suggests that this can also be a clean, manageable, and emotionally tidy arrangement. And the sociolinguist Dr. Marian Thorpe just hits the nail on the head with this. The phrase is a tool. It basically says, yep, we know this is super complicated, but hey, we've slapped this neat business-like label on it, so now we don't have to actually deal with all the messy parts. It's a way to manage all that complexity by just pretending it isn't there. So, okay, that's the language, but how does this all play out in the real world? Well, let's look at the gap between the stories we tell ourselves about these arrangements, mostly thanks to Hollywood, and what the actual data says really happens. And let me tell you, it is a huge gap. We've all seen the movie, right? Justin Timberlake, Mila Kunis, they give it a shot, and what a surprise, they fall madly in love and live happily ever after. That's the Hollywood story. But in real life, things are way more unpredictable. In fact, ending up in a romantic partnership is actually the least likely outcome of all. So why is it so tough to keep things separate? Neuropsychologist Dr. Helen Fisher gives us this absolutely perfect analogy. See, when you mix the deep bond of friendship with physical intimacy, your brain just gets flooded with chemicals like oxytocin and dopamine. You can think of them as the cuddle hormone and the reward chemical. You can't just expect that powerful chemical reaction to stay in one corner of your life. The heat is going to spread. So just how often does that picture-perfect Hollywood ending actually happen? Well, according to a major study from the University of Michigan that tracked these exact relationships, it's only about 15% of the time. That's it, just 15%. And this chart breaks it all down for us. You've got that tiny 15% that turns into a relationship. But look at the rest. In over 85% of cases, it does not end in romance. The most common results are either going back to just being friends, or almost as often, the whole thing, friendship and benefits, just dissolves completely. So much for that happy ending, right? This kind of brings us to an even bigger question. Why did we even need a term like this in the first place? It turns out it reveals a very modern obsession we have with categorizing every single little aspect of our lives, especially our connections with other people. For most of human history, relationships didn't really need all these hyper-specific labels. But then, starting around the 90s on college campuses, as our social lives got bigger and more complicated, terms like FWB started to pop up. And now it's just exploded. We've got situationships, talking stages. They're all just attempts to put a label on the beautifully undefinable. And that, right there, is the real job of this phrase. It's a shortcut. By just saying, hey, let's be friends with benefits, you're instantly establishing a whole set of unspoken rules and expectations. It lets you completely sidestep that direct, often awkward, and deeply vulnerable conversation about what you both actually want, what you feel, and what you might be afraid of. And this all leads us to the absolute core paradox of this entire concept. It's an attempt to create a nice, clear definition for something that is, by its very nature, completely ambiguous and messy. I mean, just look at everything this tidy, transactional phrase completely ignores. There's no space in friends with benefits for the messy reality of human emotions. There's no room for jealousy, for insecurity, or for the subtle shifts in power that always come with intimacy. It's as if we're all just pretending those things don't exist. So really, the popularity of this phrase isn't even about the sex or the friendship. It's about our deep human desire for control. In a world that can feel so uncertain, a term like friends with benefits offers this powerful illusion that we can actually manage our hearts like a business deal, and protect ourselves from all that emotional risk. And that leaves us with one final pretty profound question to chew on. We've tried to create a system, a label, a neat little box for one of the most complicated parts of being a person. But can we really apply the cold, hard logic of a balance sheet to the deeply illogical, beautiful, and stubbornly untransactional business of human connection? It's something to think about.